the Rangers, they have this situation with Lundqvist. He has 1 year left on his deal. Do they try to trade him? Do they just, swallow their pride, eat the money, and buy him out and let him go? What are they going to do? I think the Devils are probably going to be in that same boat, and they know as well as anybody that nobody right now is going to be interested in getting a goaltender who's approaching his mid-30s that is making $12 million over the next 2 years and has really started to show a lot of regression, so to speak, mainly because of injuries. So I think that's definitely something. So the Devils will have to say, okay, I think we don't really have much of a choice except giving him another opportunity, because we also don't want to keep him down in Binghamton. Again, giving him $6 million for that season and possibly next if he plays past this year. It's a situation where I think the Devils will let it play out, see what happens with Corey. If he starts to regress more, especially early on in the year, I think the Devils may just decide to buy him out and just move on. Or they may just hold off and wait till the expansion draft and just let him, be taken, by or at least hopefully be taken by, Seattle, which, I don't know what goalies will be available. Corey might be the best available goaltender of any of the guys that might be available in the expansion draft. But I think this really will be Corey's last chance. And he's going to have to walk a fine line, because he knows that he's not the starter of the future. Clearly, Mackenzie Blackwood has proven that. But we need to have a goaltender that can relieve Mackenzie Blackwood, we feel confident about, and doesn't force Blackwood to play 60, 65 games next season. We don't want to burn him out, because the NHL has basically evolved so much over the last 2 years of having, multiple goaltenders that you feel good with. Look at the Vegas Golden Knights, for example. They have a really good problem. They have Robin Leonard and Marc-Andre Fleury both playing exceptionally well in the playoffs, that they could just put either one of them in and they're going to have success. That's what the Devils need to get to. In order for them to become a playoff contender and eventually a Stanley Cup contender, they can't just have one really good goaltender. They need to have two very solid, good goaltenders that it doesn't matter who we put in net, we feel confident in. And hopefully Corey can, continue to redeem himself, prove that, so that maybe we can keep him on longer as we continue to try to develop and rebuild. But I will say that this is definitely Corey's last chance. And if he doesn't, show signs that he's getting better, the Devils will probably be a lot quicker in making a decision for the long-term basis with Corey Schneider.
Do you think it's, actually this question is sort of for everybody. So,
sure.
Would you guys say it's safe to say that Corey's last good year was 2016?
It was the 2015-2016 season, and then he was
sounds about right.
He was kind of a average-ish 2016-17.
Like, couldn't you make the argument, though, like the year they made the playoffs? Like, I know, like, right off the bat, he was very, very good to start that season. Because if I remember correctly, I think the Devils started that season like 11-2 or like 11-3.
Yeah.
I mean, they started to struggle there towards the end, but those wins at the beginning of the year sort of helped them. And then obviously, Hall put them on his back, and Kincaid turned into like,
Superman
in net, which was a fluke, obviously. But and then you watched that playoff series against Tampa Bay. Like, it was pretty even though we lost in 5 games. Obviously it doesn't help taking penalties against a potent offense like Tampa Bay, right? Like, you're getting down 2-0, 3-0 right off the bat. Like, they put Corey in there for Game 3, and he was lights out. And then even in Game 5 when we lost, the only reason that we were even in the game to begin with, losing that game, was because of him. And then all of a sudden, it was back to Corey Schneider's brutal again and all this.
Yeah.
It's like
it's got to be the lower body and the mentality from those injuries that John Hines ran him into the ground basically pretty much every day in and out.
Thank you.
I hate to say it, but it's the coaching.
I don't think it's just on John Hines too. I mean, before he got here, Schneider was playing like 60 to 65 games a year on a bad team, and they didn't have anyone really to back him up. So it's I'm not blaming Hines for Corey's downfall here.
Yeah, I would say this, that when the Devils acquired him prior to the 2013-14 season, he was one of the most talked about goaltender, younger goaltenders in the NHL, and a lot of teams were interested in getting him because he had proven time and time again, backing up Roberto Luongo, that he was capable of being a number one goaltender. And the Devils at the time had Marty Brodeur, but he was getting close to the end of his time in the NHL, and the Devils had to find a number one goaltender, and they got it in Corey Schneider. The issue was for, between the 2013-14 season and the 2016-17 season is that the Devils lacked any sort of scoring. They really struggled with putting the puck in the back of the net. So they gave him so little help offensively that there were so many games that I saw where he had to make 35, 40, sometimes 50 saves just to make sure that the Devils could stay alive. And so they lost a lot of close, low-scoring games because Corey played at a Vezina-like level, in my opinion. I know people want to say, oh, look at his record, and how could he be that way? Well, there's a lot more to it than just your win-loss record, because there's games where your team only scores a goal and you give up 2, but you lose because your team just doesn't help you. So I think with Corey, his last really good season, I guess like really good you would say, is probably 2015-16, but his last good year was 17-18 after he came back from injury because he had something to prove. And you saw in the playoffs when the Devils decided to put him in that he became the Corey Schneider that we had seen in years past. He helped us win the only game of that playoff round against Tampa Bay. They never got blown out after that point. Kincaid did not look good in game 1. He looked really bad in game 2, and Corey came in and just did what he had to do. But once you get injured as a goalie in your groin, that's like you hurting your arm as a quarterback. It's like your whole livelihood. And he could not push off and do the certain things that he could do because honestly, his body was wearing out from the fact that for 3-4 years, he had to basically carry the team. The team didn't have anybody big name. I know people want to say, oh, we had Jaromir Jagr, but that was, Jagr was well past his prime by that point. Corey Schneider was the main guy. He was the star, so to speak, for a while there because he was the only guy that was playing at what you would consider an elite level. And if the Devils had just been able to find just a little bit more goal scoring, I think that they would have made the playoffs more consistently, and people would have, around the NHL, would have recognized Corey as a more legit goaltender. So I blame it partially on John Hines because his system was very, very conservative, very defensive, not a lot of aggressive plays, and even as we were getting talent, goal scoring talent, we were still not, being as aggressive as we should. So Corey was still having to do it. I think it just showed that Corey just got totally burnt out, and that's what I'm afraid of with Mackenzie Blackwood. Let Corey Schneider be a cautionary tale. Don't allow a very talented goaltender to have to make so many saves and play in so many games early on that by the time we get to the point where the team is very competitive and very good, he's not playing well because he's burnt out physically and burnt out mentally as well. I think that was the big thing with Corey. And I think, he won't tell you, in public, but I think personally he would say that for a couple of years, he didn't get a whole lot of support. We weren't worrying about goaltending and defense. We were constantly worrying about goal scoring. Now that we finally got goal scoring, we're starting to worry about defense and goaltending because it's not where it was a couple years ago. If we can find that balance of having really solid offense with a half decent defense and just continue to, block a few more shots so that, these guys don't have to make every tremendous save. If we can do that, we'll be good. So I think that was the biggest reason why Corey regressed and why people want to say that he sucked. But the reality was that, A, he was constantly dealing with a groin injury, and that is hard as a goaltender. And B, the Devils haven't had decent defense in about 3 or 4 years. I'm talking decent defense. I'm not talking world class like when we were winning cups in the in the late 90s, early 2000s. I'm talking about a half decent defense that can actually block shots. So that's kind of my thing. But to kind of answer the question, the last great year that he had was definitely 15-16, and 17-18 was his last good year, especially in the second half of the year when he was healthy.
Okay, I want to touch up on that, later on, but Joe, I'm gonna ask you for a couple minutes just to kind of take over for a sec. I gotta slip inside here. I gotta do something. Don't go in. I don't want to go into the main topics that we want to discuss tonight until I come back. But just kind of, I guess, trying to follow up sort of on the goaltending situation, like free agents available. Is there somebody in the draft, maybe in the first round or after, that we can discuss about goaltending? Is there somebody across the river that might consider coming here?
Jake,
spice it
do
up
not even say that, Jake.
Yeah, I had to say that. You gotta spice it up a little bit. So I just give you guys something to talk about for a couple minutes.
I do see going after Thomas Greiss in the free agency. Yeah. I don't think Lou's gonna want to give big money to a guy like him, where he values a guy like Semyon Varlamov.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, they also have Ilya Sorokin, who's going to be, his contract kicks in next season, so it's going to be him and Varlamov, manning the aisles and that. So Greiss is definitely going to hit free agency. I think that's one guy that the Devils could probably target to back up McKenzie. There'll be a couple of names out there too, depending who hits free agency, that I think would be pretty good fits for the Devils. I think everyone's seen what Anton Khudobin's done in the playoffs so far for the Stars. He's probably up in that free agent value as we speak. And then if Cam Talbot hits free agency, I have a pretty good feeling that. Yeah, I think if he hits free agency, I have a pretty good feeling the Devils are going to try to go after him. And I wouldn't even be surprised if they gave him a little bit of term, nothing crazy. We're talking maybe like 2 years or something like that to come and back up McKenzie for a couple of years. I think on the free agency market, those would be the guys I look at, Greiss and Cam Talbot for sure. And I think Khudobin might be a little bit too expensive to be a backup at this point.
Especially considering how well he's been playing in the postseason.
Yeah, he's been ridiculous. I think if the Devils want to maybe keep Corey Schneider, they could go and grab like a third goalie like Anton Forsberg or Laurent Brossoit, who have NHL experience, and they just kind of be stashed in Binghamton as like the third goalie call up, because if they're not going to buy out Schneider, he's going to be on that roster next season, which is definitely a possibility. So that's another route I could see them going, is maybe trying to grab a cheap third goalie who's kind of ready to go in case they need to call him up to the NHL.
Wasn't there rumors there a couple years ago at the deadline? Weren't the Devils talking with Edmonton or Calgary? I think it was. Maybe I think he was in Edmonton at that point. Weren't the Devils? Wasn't there a rumor that they were after Cam Talbot at one point?
Yeah. I think it was last offseason. Even Ray Shero had been looking to try to acquire. He was a free agent last summer, if I remember right. And I think Shero
was, yeah.
Yeah, Shero was trying to acquire his negotiating rights, but or something along those lines. But I don't know I think Talbot had like a no move clause or no trade clause or something like that.
I think it was a no trade clause.
Yeah, I think he had. This was the last year of his deal. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. He had a no trade clause, and that was the rumor, and he didn't want to come to the Devils. So
I don't think the Devils should spend very little time focusing on anybody goaltending wise when it comes to free agency, because again, you're not going to buy out Corey Schneider, because you realize $12 million over the next 2 years is a huge amount of money that you're giving to one guy who to be your backup, not even to be your starter, to be your backup. And if you buy him out, that means you're giving him money for the next, I think, like 4 to 6 years.
It'd be 4 years.
It'd be 4 years. So
hence why I stay away from Holtby.
Yeah.
And yeah, first of all, I saw people talking about Braden Holtby to the Devils. That's a pipe dream. No, it shouldn't happen. Braden Holtby is way past his prime. I do not think that the Devils need him. And it's like, We have a young goaltender, Mackenzie Blackwood. Oh, and we have another young goaltender who's unproven in Gil Sen, who played all of one game last year. So we don't even know what we got in him. We have other guys like